Good morning, everybody. It's Sunday, September 24th. We've got football today. It's week 3 of the NFL season. We got fantasy football. We got a nice slate to talk about. It's another week with a doubleheader on Monday Night Football. So, not as many games today, but we still got 2 games on Monday Night Football that we'll talk about too. Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, enjoying another weekend off, getting used to the new gig with the weekends off, man. This is the life, baby. This is the life.
There you go. Don't
But
have.
hey, how do you feel about the double headers on Monday night? I kind of like the fact that, when the first one went to halftime, you were able to just flip the channel and tune into the second one and whatnot. Do you like the double header, or you just want the single
Oh,
isolated Monday nighter?
I love the double headers. More to look forward to on Monday night. It's not, sometimes when you go to Monday night, it's not the most appealing game. That's what happens with the standalones. Like on Thursday night too. For the longest time, those games weren't good. But with the double header, more chance for good football and just more drama also for fantasy football. So it makes Monday night that much more dramatic. For those of you that are in like close fantasy matchups. So I'm all for it. More football, the better for me. And I like the way they've been slating these games too on Sunday. I think there's been more afternoon games. Usually there's been like 3 games on the afternoon slate or 4 games. I think the last 2 Sundays there's been 5 games in the afternoon slate. So a little bit more to look forward to at 3 o'clock also. So I'm a fan of what they're doing with the scheduling so far.
No,
But yeah,
no.
let's get into it. Ben and I are going to take you through the slate. We're going to talk a little bit about weather this week, just because there is a little hurricane on the East Coast. But before we do that, let's get into Thursday night. We did have a game real quick. 49ers against the Giants. 49ers took care of business. The spreads are down there, at least the winning spreads. 49ers covered, and the under hit at under 44. Ben, any takeaways from this game real quick before we get into the Sunday slate? Just wanted to bring it up because Christian McCaffrey had another big game, and the 49ers looked like a freight train.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Christian McCaffrey scores in, I believe, his 12th straight game. We were talking about his anytime touchdown, and it was up, north of minus 200. So, a number you really don't want to touch, but it's automatic. I mean, my biggest takeaway was how well Purdy was able to feed McCaffrey, Debo, and Kittle, who all had really good fantasy football games. I think anybody who had any of those 3 players is going into the matchup today feeling pretty well.
Yeah, glad you brought up that last guy. It was good to see Kittle back into the game plan. Was pretty quiet the first 2 weeks, so I'm sure fantasy owners are glad to see that. Didn't get in the end zone, but I think he had like 9 targets, so that's always
Yeah.
good to see. And Debo had a little scare. They just confirmed no broken ribs or anything like that, so he should be good to go. Although that was scary there in the middle of the game, and he did
His
come back and score a touchdown, so that was nice.
his catch in traffic, bro, is ridiculous. Like the way that he's able to hold on to, the football while he's running those routes over the middle where he gets popped a lot of the time and he's able to just bounce right back up. So just do want to highlight that Ayuk was out. So I mean, we did see, a little more focus. Maybe George Kittle was getting those Ayuk targets. I know we had a bet for Debo's receptions over on the pod that we gave out. So that came in, but when Ayuk comes back, it's going to be interesting just to see, who's going to kind of maybe be a little left out, whether it be Kittle or Debo.
Yep. Well, as always, fantasy football with the 49ers, always a lot to offer with all those names that Ben just ran through. So going to be a lot to look forward to for these guys, especially as they're winning games. Let's get on to the schedule. As we said, this is a slate for Sunday, week 3. Got a couple of big games here to note, like I mean, the Jets and the Patriots. I know the records for both teams aren't good, but you got to think this is like a do or die situation. A lot of teams in do or dies. There's a lot of 0-2 teams here that are going to be fighting for their lives. Any games you want to point out, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty interested in that Chargers and Minnesota game. There's been a
Two
lot of
0-2
noise.
teams.
Two 0-2 teams. I think that this could go either way. Like the Chargers lose and go 0-3. I think that their coach probably gets the axe mid-season. I don't know what the odds are on him being first coach fired, but he's looking like a candidate. I haven't been a big fan of Justin Herbert, but I mean, the Chargers, bro, just keep, underachieving and underachieving. And then as far as the Vikings, a lot of talks about maybe the Jets pursuing Kirk Cousins if the Vikings go 0-3 It's a contract year for him, so maybe a little rental for the Jets. We'll see. I am really intrigued by that game, and whoever loses is going to have some pretty tough decisions to make, come next week, I think.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more intriguing games. I'm going to have to agree with you there. And, with Justin Herbert and his coach, Brandon Staley, there comes a time, like you said, you just got to start winning games, right? You just got to start finding a way to win in the playoffs, especially after what happened last year in that lead that they blew against the Jags, one of the more unforgivable, leads lost in playoff history. So definitely on the hot seat for both. I wouldn't say Justin Herbert because he just got paid this past offseason, right? So, he's going to be there for a little while. But eventually he's going to be one of those guys that you're going to start talking about, that he has a contract, he has his regular season stats, but he has nothing to show for it. So a lot of stuff to be decided here this week. So let's get into the weather real quick as we note.
Roland, real quick. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about
What's
that.
up?
If the Lions and Falcons game, just because I know we're not going to talk about it later, but what's kind of your feel on that? I mean, the Falcons are 2-0. Do you believe in the type of football that they're playing right now? They're really, running the hell out of the ball. How do you think that game plays out with the Lions today?
The Falcons, I think they're one of those teams that are, they're 2-0, but they've had a semi-soft schedule, and I don't think what they're doing is sustainable. I know they're running the crap out of the ball, like you said, but that's really to hide what they have at quarterback, I think. Yes, they're blessed to have a stable of running backs. Like you got Bijan, who's already going to be a top 3 or top 5 running back as a rookie. And then you got Algier there also as a change of pace guy. But, Ritter, I think there's going to be problems there in terms of like getting it to the weapons, like out on the perimeter and stuff like that and down the field. So I think eventually it's going to start to even out. Although this week I've seen a lot of people are on the Falcons. So I'm not sure if this is going to be the week that they come down to reality, because I don't think the Lions defense is so great, but we'll see if they're able to keep up with the Lions on offense, because I think this is going to be a game where you might have to see Ritter throw it a little bit.
Yeah, that's
but no, I'm not believing them as a
me.
2-0 team, to answer your question.
I just think the style they play, like you said, you get minimum possessions because they run the ball, they drain the clock, so they tend to stick around. Like that game against Green Bay, I'm sure a lot of people that were backing the Falcons last week against Green Bay kind of thought, oh, shit, it's not looking good. But the type of football that they play, they kind of just stick around because they limit possessions. And I do think once they start playing the more elite teams, they're not going to be able to do that. But then you look at their division and there's no elite teams in their division.
Exactly. So they could be one of those teams that gets into the playoffs just out of virtue of who they're playing in their division, right? I get what you're saying, but I think eventually it's going to catch up to them, because I like what you're saying. They control the possession, but once they get behind on a team, I don't know, they have the capability of, coming back with, what they have at quarterback. So we'll see, though. Anything else to talk about here on the slate before we get into the weather real quick?
That's it. That's all I got, Ro.
Yeah, so we got some weather here to talk about just on the East Coast, really. We got a hurricane coming, so we're going to have like games like Washington and the Bills potentially affected by weather. The Patriots and Jets for sure are going to have weather over there. Dolphins and Broncos potentially. So, Ben, anything to look at here when you're talking about betting totals? Is there anything that worries you here for fantasy football?
For fantasy football, I'll say, and I'll ask you, like in that Patriots and Jets game, we already see a really low total. They say that one's going to be rainy throughout the game. Division matchup. I benched Garrett Wilson last week, and he did pop that one big touchdown. But if you're a Garrett Wilson owner, are you thinking about benching him here in this spot against the Patriots defense, who is, pretty respectable for, most years? And then, like you said, with who he has at quarterback, I mean, it's big player bust.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the makeup of your team. If you can afford to bench Garrett Wilson, I mean, this might be one of the games to do it. The total, I think, has been bet all the way down to like 35, if I'm not mistaken. I know it opened like at 39. I don't know where it's sitting at this Sunday, but not a lot of points expected already. You got the weather. If you can afford to bench Garrett Wilson, I mean, I would look to do so. But if you can't, I mean, he's one of those guys you drafted in the second or third round. So you're not benching those guys most weeks when they're available to play. Or are you thinking about benching
I,
him again?
I mean, I'm definitely benching him. I traded him actually, so I can't bench him. I actually got rid of him. I packaged him with Swift for Devonta Smith. But another question that I was going to say, like, would you play, maybe like Drake London over him? You saw Drake London score last week. Would you play, guys like George Pickens maybe
Yeah,
over him?
I'd play those guys over Garrett Wilson this week. If I had those guys on my bench, like Drake London, I'd put him over him.
Addison.
Addison, I'd probably put him over him this week just because of the total in that game. Expected to be a lot of points. He might be one of the guys that gets in. So, yeah, if you have those options for sure, I'd look to swap them out.
Gotcha.
We
Yeah,
got some
that's all I
questions
got.
here. Shout out to people in the chat. Shout out Ryan. He's got a question here for fantasy. He has Mike Evans, Lamb, Cooper at flex. He's like, should I start Garrett or Cooper?
There we
See,
go.
that's a good question.
I would. I'll go first, real just quick. I'll go Cooper because, like I said, I mean, Ryan, if you bench Garrett and by some chance he scores again this week, I know it's going to be 3 weeks, 3 touchdowns for him if I'm not mistaken. But I'm looking maybe to get rid of him, bro, because it's not really sustainable. I would personally go Cooper over Garrett.
Yeah, I'd go Cooper, especially this week against the tight ends. This is how you beat the tight ends through the air. You'd expect Watson to have some success this week, especially, unfortunately, Chubb got hurt, so they're going to be going through the air a little bit more. I agree with you going Cooper here, especially over Garrett with his situation going on. But yeah, good question, Ryan. And you got some people backing up Cooper in the chat. Shout out Jose. He's watching on YouTube. He says Cooper easy. He agrees with Ben and myself. Shout out One in the chat, taking a shot at Ben's team.
Bill's going down.
Let's get to the injury report. There is a little bit to talk about this week. Won't spend too much time, but do got to run through some of these names like Austin Eckler, Jalen Waddle, both ruled out. Austin Eckler a little bit more murky in terms of his long-term outlook, but Waddle out this week with the concussion. Richardson also with the concussion this week. Got 2 Packers here who are questionable, kind of with hamstring injuries. Haven't been able to play Christian Watson all year, so unfortunate if you've drafted him, kind of been on your IR if you have those slots. A lot of hamstrings to talk about with DeAndre Hopkins and Pacheco. I think Pacheco's supposed to play, though. Ben, before I run through the rest of this list, anything here that's popping out to you? Anything that's scaring you personally?
I mean, the one that surprised me was Waddle being out. I think that he just got ruled out yesterday. And the Christian Watson one, we talked about it briefly on a previous pod, but somebody who I was looking to draft and I just wasn't able to, and it was kind of like, how lucky I didn't get him. But I mean, I still think that he's somebody you got to hold on to. You're not dropping Watson just yet. You've seen Love be, I think right now he's the number 1 QB in certain formats. So he's competent, and Watson is the number 1 guy on paper. You just need him healthy. So if you're a Watson owner, I would say just keep being patient. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah, I got to hold on to him. Not really. I mean, I guess I am worried about his long-term outlook because he hasn't played yet. But hopefully, once he gets on the field, he's able to, exert his full potential because he definitely can play out there. Definitely some other names on the list. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got a nagging turf toe thing going on. He's questionable. I haven't heard anything about him not playing. Although if anybody has any answers about that, feel free to throw it on the chat. I just got an answer here on Aaron Jones. He's out. And Christian Watson, he's out again today as well. So just talked about both those guys. They just both got ruled out along with David Bakhtiari. So those guys are out again. And then the guy pictured here, Joe Burrow, questionable calf injury, long-term outlook. Ben, are you worried about him if you're a Bengals quarterback owner here?
Yeah, and a Bengals receiver owner. I mean, I know T. Higgins kind of had his game last week, but the people that drafted Jamar Chase, number 3 overall, that was a popular spot, for him to go after Jefferson and CMC. They're in a pretty tough bind right now. I tried trading Devonta Smith for Chase just to feel the temperature out. One guy's been scoring, Chase has been struggling. They still haven't completely given up on Chase. But I am worried about Chase going forward just based off where you drafted him. And I mean, who's their backup?
Yeah, I don't know who their backup is. I know they just signed somebody. I can't tell you off the top of my head who that was, but just gotta wonder if they're truly worried about Joe Burrow. It's been pretty hush hush about the injury since it happened. You know, you just heard that he re-aggravated that calf injury. Can't be good. Oh, there we go, Ryan. Thank you. AJ McCarron was signed. I don't know. That has to be real because I know he's been active in the XFL and he's actually been doing good in that format. So
But
good for
Roland,
him getting signed.
you can also tell how, like that Burrow is injured in watching him play. I mean, they've
He
been
hasn't been
bad.
effective. I mean, he's a 32nd ranked quarterback in standard formats, so not hasn't been too good. I mean, and like you said, Jamar Chase hasn't been effective. T. Higgins popped last week. He was the benefactor of those 2 touchdowns. He caught both of them last week, so he had a good week. But definitely got to be worried about them. And before I move on, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention wide receiver 1, Puka Nacua. He's questionable, oblique injury. Ben, have you heard anything about this?
No,
About his outlook?
no, but this was the same thing that had me not start him last week. For Brandon Ayuk, I played Ayuk last week instead of Nakua, and I'm not falling for it this week. He's gonna play. I'm gonna start him. He's in all my lineups. Wide receiver 1. I expect him to play.
All right. Any other names you want to talk about here before you move on?
No, man. Odell. Sad to see him on the injury list
Yeah.
again. He really hasn't been too effective early in the season for the Ravens, but I honestly think it's time for him to hang it up. I do.
Yeah. And just me personally, Isaiah Pacheco, even though he's playing, I swapped him out this morning. I'm not going to mess with him this week, especially with that hammy. I don't know how effective he's going to be. Probably going to be rotating out the running backs anyways, especially with that injury situation with Pacheco. But
Yeah, good call there.
oh, and then I guess just real quick, Montgomery, him being out, I did hear Gibbs is going to get the full load pause this week, so we'll see. That's the third week we've heard.
I gotta
Gibbs
see it to believe it,
getting that
bro.
load. So that leads me to fantasy football. If you guys have any questions, please do shout out. I did get a question. Personally, what do you think about Madison versus shit? What was it? I already blanked out. I think it was dang it. Madison versus Miles Sanders. Who would you start in that situation?
I would go Miles Sanders, especially with Andy Dalton in at quarterback today. In the injury report, we really didn't highlight Bryce Young being out, but Andy Dalton is going to be starting for the Panthers today. Miles Sanders has been. I mean, I don't know if he's touched 10, but he's been in the 8-9 point range. I think that he's due. He's due for a good 10, 15 point game. I would go with him. I know that Cam Akers is not going to be active for the Vikings. That has been confirmed. But Madison, man, he really hasn't shown much. Kind of got lucky that he got into the end zone with that receiving touchdown week 1 off of the second effort. But for Madison, I mean, he's mid. I saw a tweet that said Cam Akers and Alexander Madison are about to have the biggest mid off we've ever seen. And I think they're just mid.
And it's kind of sad because for the longest time Madison was that auto start. As soon as Dalvin Cook was hurt, you're like, oh, you got to throw Madison in there, or
2 games Cook would miss. Yep.
He's the guy that you wanted to stash for those 20-point games that were inevitable because he would go off. But if you really looked at the underlying metrics, he just relied on a lot of volume that he would get, and that's. If you don't have the skill, eventually that's not going to be, sustainable for you. And that's, kind of proven to be the case now that he's gotten, the full load there in that situation. But I have another question here, and this has to do with Joe Burrow, but like T. Higgins versus Jordan Addison, who would you go in that situation?
Yeah, I think today I'd go with Addison. I know with Addison, he's had a touchdown in the last 2 games, and it's kind of been on the big play. It's not like somebody that's getting 6-7 receptions a game. He scored on the big play. I think Joe Burrow's going to play, so I would just keep T. Higgins in there. But yeah, I would go Higgins based off me thinking Joe Burrow is going to play today.
Nice. Well, that was a quick little fantasy mailbag just to get us started here in the fantasy section, because we're going to move over to must starts, or kind of like our flex of the week kind of deal here, because that's kind of the players that we're looking at this week. But do send your questions throughout the podcast, and we're going to talk about them and just discuss throughout. Ben, take us through your must start of the week here. It's on the left side. Who is it for you?
Yeah, for me, it's Michael Williams, wide receiver of the Los Angeles Chargers. Mike Will hasn't gotten into the end zone yet. We know that sometimes he can be a touchdown dependent guy with the big plays that he gets. But he's gotten nine targets week 1, 13 targets week 2. He had 8 receptions for 80 some yards last week and didn't get in the end zone. This week they're up against the Minnesota Vikings, who give it up. I mean, to just about everybody that they play. They're going to be in shootouts, which is why Kirk Cousins has become such a thing now in fantasy football. People are just rolling with Kirk because it's going to be a shootout. I expect Mike Will to get into the end zone today. So for my flex of the week, give me Mike Williams, wide receiver 2 for the Chargers.
Nice. I like that play a lot. I'm debating personally here. How about you help me out here personally? Mike Williams, or what would you start him over like DK Metcalf? Because I have a league where I have Mike Williams, DK Metcalf, and Ridley. And I'm going to start Ridley, so I'm between Metcalf and
you
Mike
can't
Williams.
flex one of the two?
Well, my other guy is AJ Brown.
Last week Metcalf did have that rib injury.
Yeah, and he got tackled at the 1 last week.
At the 1, that was annoying. That was very,
that was
very
on the
annoying.
Inches. Really, that wasn't even the 1. That was like right there.
But, he was right there with the rib injury, but he did come back into the game. I mean, it's tough, Roll. It's tough, but I'm going to roll with my start of the week. I'm going to say Mike Will outscores DK Metcalf this week.
And you got to like the matchup, too. There's going to be a lot of points in that Chargers and Vikings game. So I think that totals at like 54 or something like that. So a lot of points expected there. My guy here, a little bit off. I wouldn't say too off the charts here because he did have a good week last week, and a lot of people have expected him to do good. It's George Pickens, and I like him against the Raiders this week. The Raiders, another defense that gives it up, especially in the secondary. You saw Pickens start to, kind of pop last week, and it wasn't like on a go route or anything like that. It was on a play across the field, and he really showed that he had that burst. I think the Steelers, if they want to be successful, they got to get Pickens involved more, and I think this is one of the weeks where we start to see it, especially against the Raiders defense that does like to give it up. So if you're looking for like a flex level start, you have some questions, you got maybe an injury or something, I like George Pickens to be a surprise guy that maybe gets another 17 to 20 points this week.
Yeah, he's the clear number 1, and he kind of had his game last week, right? His breakout game that everybody was drafting him to be their flex wide receiver, their flex player, or wide receiver 2. And finally, you kind of saw it last week. He can take it. He can take a pass to the crib, whether it be the slant or the go route. And then with Deontay Johnson out, you got to like him even more here. So I agree, Roland. I think that he's a pretty safe floor now, as long as Kenny Pickett can throw to his guys.
Yeah. Any other guys you want to talk about this week that maybe like deserves like a mention? Maybe like, are you comfortable just automatically throwing a guy like Josh Kelly into your lineup this week? I know last week people automatically, if you had him on the waiver or if you maybe stashed him because Eckler's another guy who gets banged up a little bit. And so you had him and you just threw him in, only got like 3 points last week or something like that. I was one of those guys that did that. Ben, what are your thoughts here on Josh Kelly?
Same thing. I kind of had him stashed in one league. I put a little $5 bid in for him and I ended up getting him. But in the league that I had Eckler, I had him stashed for that reason, because Eckler, kind of like Cook and like Swift, you kind of know that 2 or 3 games out of the year, they're probably going to be out, and their backup is going to be the top wanted guy on the waiver wire that week. So, yeah, I went ahead and stashed him. I'm going back to the well. We got a 54-point total like we just talked about. Everybody can eat. Keenan Allen has been eating to start this season. It's been surprising me how much he's even getting into the end zone. But Herbert's slinging it around. They're really not stopping anybody. The Vikings aren't stopping anybody. I'm starting Kelly. I'm starting Mike Will. I'm starting Herbert. I'm starting Keenan Allen.
Yeah. What about another guy? I'm going to throw him out there before we get to the question from Mike, and shout out Mike for throwing a question in here in the chat. But I do have a question between Christian Kirk, he's a guy, he popped a little bit last week. You saw Zay Jones. He's injured. He's out this week. Didn't mention him by name, but he is out. Christian Kirk was kind of the odd man out in terms of the being the top two receivers. He was only in on 3 wide receiver sets. Are you comfortable throwing Kirk into your starting lineup if that's kind of what you drafted? Like if you have that situation?
Yeah, yeah, I am comfortable because last week, I mean, Lawrence missed a couple of guys just because they couldn't keep their toes in they couldn't toe tap in the back of the end zone or the ball was just a little past. They're playing a Texans team who's banged up. Stingley isn't playing for the Texans. The defense is banged up. They're getting scored on. The Jags are probably going to score 30 points today. I think ETN was a guy who's he's more of an obvious start. That's why I didn't have it up here. But I expect ETN to have a pretty big game. And I think, Ridley had a pretty piss poor performance last week. I think
Yeah,
that
it's off week
the
too.
Jags are going to score 30 points. So, yes, I would start him this week if you're in that type of bind because I see Lawrence with, 2 or 3 touchdowns for sure.
Yeah, so I like Christian Kirk also this week, especially with those injuries that you mentioned. Let's get to the questions in the chat. Shout out Mike. He said he had to bench Alan Lazard to start Terry McLaurin. Not sure if that's a good move. I think that's a smart move. And
Great
I think,
move.
if anything, that's based on Sam Howell. Sam Howell's shown that he's pretty competent. I think he's shown that he can sling it. I think there's some competition for targets in that Washington offense, but Ben, do you agree with me here saying that Scary Terry's a pretty good start over Alan Lazard?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that that's the way to go, Mike. No doubt about it. And he scored a touchdown last week. Like you said about Howell, he's not scared to put the ball up in the air, man. He's kind of a gunslinger type mentality. So it's the same as Geno Smith. It's guys that are not scared to let their receivers go and get it. So yeah, I would start Terry, especially the Bills defense can kind of give it up. They're good for a couple of big plays. Terry McLaurin is that type of big play receiver. So I think that he can have a pretty decent game today against the Bills.
Nice. I like that. Next question. Shout out Bonds here. When is AJ Dillon going to do anything with Aaron Jones? Are you comfortable throwing AJ Dillon into your starting lineup, especially with Aaron Jones out, as we just discussed earlier?
I know I said I'm going back to the well on Joshua Kelly. I'm not an AJ Dillon owner, so I didn't do that last week, but I would have had I had him, right?
Yep.
You might want to trade for the guy, and everybody's like, no, why would I trade for him? He's going to get his start. I don't see it, bro. I mean, I love the guy at Boston College, Fonz, but in the NFL, I don't see it. I don't know what's missing. He had the opportunity last week, especially against a team like the Falcons that, like we talked about, there might be pretenders, right? And he didn't do a damn thing. So I would not plug him back in. I mean, maybe he gets a short goal line touchdown if they get inside the 5, but I would not start AJ Dillon again. No.
Yeah, that's a little scary here. I think AJ Dillon, he's teetering on that. Dude, are we questioning whether or not he's even good? I'm not trying to be disrespectful to him, but are we questioning whether or not he's ever going to be a productive running back in this league? Like Fonz is asking, when is he going to put the production out there when he does have this opportunity? Because that's all we've ever talked about really with AJ Dillon. When is he going to get that full share? And whenever he does get it, it kind of leaves you wondering, like, does he really have it? So I think that's a good question to really think about. Let's get to Ben. Anything else on that situation before I close it on AJ Dillon?
No, brother, I'm good.
All right, let's get to the next question here. Shout out to everybody here that's watching and being active here in the comments. Always appreciate it. Diego's asking Joe Burrow situation. I know you and I talked about this a little bit earlier. He has a question in particular: Higgins or Judy? I think that's a perfect question because, I mean, you got a guy like Russell Wilson. He showed a little bit last week that the offense might be okay, but for the most part, still much of the same for the Broncos. Are you comfortable starting Judy over Higgins, just being a little wary of the Joe Burrow situation?
Yeah, I can see why. I think that that's the only reason why you're even considering it because of the Joe Burrow situation. I'm not sure about the time and the scheduling of the games, but is Judy going to play before Higgins plays?
No,
And
Higgins
is
is
it?
a Monday night. It's the Bengals play the
Oh,
Rams Monday night.
oh, damn it, boy. Yeah, Diego. Um, Fuck, that's
A
tough,
moment of
bro.
silence for this. That's a
Yeah,
moment of
that's
silence
tough.
before
You
you
kind of
answer.
gotta.
That's
Yeah,
how
I
you know
don't
it's
just
a
want
tough
to
one.
spit something out. I would go with Judy. I would go with Judy. They're in a must win. Kind of. They're still 6 point dogs to the Dolphins, but
The
they're in kind of
Dolphins
a
don't have
must.
a world beater defense either. They can be
No,
taken.
and like you said, we saw the Broncos put up 30 points last week. Not sure if Judy was one of the ones that got into the end zone. I think it was Sutton, but yeah, I kind of like Devontae Williams too in that backfield. For anybody who has Devontae Williams, maybe you're
Shout out to Devontae.
shuffling out your RB2 or maybe a flex. I do like Williams today for the Broncos.
All right, let's get to let's get to the next question. Juan, shout out Juan. Alex, I don't know what the question is. He asking Alex? Oh, somebody in the chat. Never mind. He's asking Christian Kirk or Jacoby Myers. Ben, what do you think here for your friend Juan?
Yeah, he's playing Alex, but I got to answer the question. I'm going Kirk. I'm going Kirk for sure.
Yeah, Myers just got ruled in. I guess he's overcome that concussion injury that he suffered, so he's going to be able to come back. And he did show that he's very capable in that week 1. But I'm still going Christian Kirk here. I like the matchup against the Jags, or not the Jags, the Texans this
The
week.
Texans.
So yeah, so let's move on here. Unless we have any other questions in the chat, shout out everybody who's been throwing in questions. Ron is all in on Russell Wilson this week. Just throwing that out there, saying Seattle Russ is back. He's slinging it today. So we all know where Ron is standing on these
Ron
questions.
says Judy then.
Yep. And Ryan's also backing up. He's saying go Judy. So we got a consensus in the chat for Diego. Let's move on from fantasy to our week 3 plays real quick. Gonna make it quick because Ben and I do have a similar play, and it's the Browns -3. For me, and Ben talked about it also when we were looking at the slate. Browns 0-2. This is one of those games where
1-1.
Though 1-1, never mind. They won week 1, but it's still like they haven't really shown much. This is a big game for Deshaun Watson to show that he still has a little bit left of his form from back in like 2019, 2020, back to from before all this stuff happened. Not going against the best defense and the Titans, they really force you to throw the ball. They're going to do everything they can to stop the run. So let's have it with the Browns. Patriots -2.5. Not super comfortable with this play, but I'm backing up Bill Belichick and his Patriots defense. The Pats, they still have a very formidable defense. They hit on their first round draft pick and Christian Gonzalez, their corner. He's shown that he's on his way to being one of the better corners in this league. And you still got a good front 7. And you're going up against Zach Wilson. I know the Jets have a really good defense, but we saw that really didn't matter. I know they were playing a much better offense than the Cowboys, but we saw that they can't hold up all games. So I think if anybody's going to score here, I have more faith in the Patriots to get a few more points than the Jets this week. So give me the Pats defense. This is a complete fade on Zach Wilson again. I don't think he's going to get it done. Ben, anything to say on the Pats before we get to your play?
Surprised to see them on your card. I think that, I see the spot, the desperation spot, and Belichick probably owns them. I don't have the numbers on what their record is, and then even more with this kid at quarterback for the Jets instead of Rodgers. So, the Patriots could possibly hit the panic button if they do lose this game, start their season off 0-3. I think at that point they're saying, okay, for sure we're moving on from Mac Jones. What's next in line? Obviously, a really good draft of QBs, a really good batch coming out this year. So I think if the Patriots lose this game, a lot of tough conversations are going to be going on, throughout the season for them. So this is a very desperate spot at home against the Jets, in a bad weather game, where their defense, this is going to be a defensive battle, probably going to be an under game. But yeah, I was surprised to see the Patriots on your card, Roland, but I see the spot.
Yeah, it's a spot, and like I said, I'm fading Zach Wilson. If he beats me or the Jets find a way to do it, like getting like 3 touchdowns on defense or turning over the Patriots and really just exerting their will on D, then I'll live with that. But I like this spot for the Pats. I trust their offense a little bit more, like I said. And that total to your question, 35 right now. Open at
That's wild.
37, at 35. So not many points expected there. Let's get to your card, Ben. If you want to elaborate on the Browns more, go for it. But take us through your card.
Yeah, for the Browns, same with you. I think that for Watson, it's kind of like, hey, guy, the rust. He played a couple games to end last season. There's people saying he's going to need 6-7 weeks this year to get back in form. But I mean, last week he gave the he didn't necessarily give them, but essentially he did 2 defensive touchdowns, and they end up losing a pretty close game to the Steelers, in which the Steelers defense scored more points than the Steelers offense. So this week he's going up against Tannehill and the Titans. Henry did miss a couple of days of practice this week because of an injury. We know that the Browns do have a good run defense. I mean, we saw them bottle up Najee Harris, although I think me and you could bottle up Najee Harris at this point.
Yeah.
But I think that this is a good spot for the Browns. I think that, Cooper, I see Cooper getting into the end zone. So I like the Browns -3. We know Derrick Henry's the best player. DeAndre Hopkins dealing with a hamstring. I mean, this Browns defense is pretty good. I really think that they're one of the better defenses in the AFC. So Browns -3. I don't think it should be that close, although we know Mike Vrabel's on the other sideline, and he knows how to stick around in games. And then my second one, Cowboys -7 first half. I think for the game, they're -11, -13. Going with the first half here, kind of like last week against the Jets, just expect them to be up by 10 points at least at halftime. Maybe they'll get stopped on one of their drives, in the first half, but this should be a game where the Cowboys are probably resting starters come the fourth quarter. So give me the Cowboys first half by a touchdown. If they're up a touchdown, I'll take the push. I'm not mad if, no harm, no foul. But I like Cowboys -7.
Yeah, even though like I'm not playing devil's advocate or anything, even though the Cardinals have been like competent in the first half, I still think the Cowboys are clear them by at least a touchdown in the first half. Even with that, the Cards don't really have much to show for. But I'm just saying because they did take it to the Giants last week, but the Giants
But
suck. Yeah.
it's the Giants and the Commanders.
Yeah, exactly.
We're thinking that the Cowboys are definitely several levels, and I'm the biggest Cowboy hater there is. But I mean, yes, Trayvon Diggs got hurt, and you're without him now. But the speed on that defense, I think they're just going to make it hell. And then we saw what the Cardinals did. I mean, I know it was in the second half, but yeah, it's a tanking team. Give me the Cowboys by a touchdown. I think at least, at worst, I think it's a push. I really do.
Yeah. Let's go Cowboys. Hopefully it's a sweat-free Sunday for the Dallas Cowboys and Ben's first half bet because I'm going to be watching that game. We do have a fantasy question before we get to – I think Ron has a teaser for us this week. Let's go back to the original question. Noe says that he just picked up Kareem Hunt or he's had Kareem Hunt on his team, and he doesn't know whether he wants to start him. He has Garrett Wilson, Cortland Sutton, Tutu Atwell, and Jalen Reed. He's kind of stuck in this situation. If you're not starting Garrett, yeah, I think it's wide receiver, tight end, or flex. Yeah, it's a flex situation.
Yeah, I mean, out of that batch of players, I think you're probably. I mean, the choices are Garrett Wilson and Tutu Atwell rolling. Is that the two guys you'd be choosing from?
Yeah, I've already had it with Cortland Sutton, not putting him on my roster, and Jaden Reed, even though Christian Watson's out again, not gonna rely on him. So I like Tutu Atwell. I know they're playing the Bengals. They have a decent defense, but he's proven to be that second target. And if you're in this situation, I mean, I would be comfortable starting him, but it's a tough one. I would start all those guys over Kareem Hunt, though. Would you? Or at least
Yeah, I'm not thinking about Kareem Hunt yet. I got to see what it looks like. I mean, give it one game. I know that you got him. That's a good stash that you had there, Noe, with Kareem Hunt. Good, some good foresight. But let's see it play out. Let's see how involved he is. I don't think that he's somebody that you throw in the starting lineup right off the bat.
And let's wrap it up real quick with our plays of the week with Ron's teaser. I think this is a 3-team 6-point teaser. From what I can tell, he's got the Ravens -1, Seahawks +1.5, and Chiefs -6.5 gets them from 12 down to under a touchdown. I mean, other than like teasing through zero on the Seahawks, I don't really have a problem with this teaser. I think it'll get there. Each team listed here should win. Anything to say about the teaser, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I know we're going to talk about Survivor, but one of those teams I am playing in Survivor. Listen, with teasers, I rather get way lower than 6.5. I know it's the Chiefs, and I know they're playing the Bears. So I've heard people say that they think the Bears are the worst team in the NFL. Fields,
Terrible.
yeah, he's bad. Another guy that the Bears might just be making a decision, halfway through the season. All right, he's not the guy. We suck. We're gonna go get one of these top 3 kids coming out this year. So I understand the 6.5, but the Chiefs haven't been world beaters by any means. They've been playing really good defense. The offense hasn't really figured it out just yet, with Kelsey being on a limited snap count and out week 1. But the 6.5 scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I like it. Like I said, I think each team should win. Maybe the Bears, like, they find a way to backdoor to make this a little scary for Ron, but for the most part, I think each team should get it done. The Ravens have some injury concerns, but they're going up against the Colts without Anthony Richardson. You're going up against Minshew, who can sling it, but you're not expecting Minshew to win the game here. So I think it's a good one for Ron. Thank you for sending that teaser in. Ron's been active in the comments. Shout out, Ron. Let's go on to Survivor, though. We've got this going on. We had a pretty good entry field, or as you see here, we already got some guys crossed out. Some guys still have an entry left that have lost, like including myself. I still got one going. 26 entries remain. Pot a little over 700. Ben, what's your Survivor pick this week, and what was your thought going into your pick, real quick?
Yeah, so one of my Survivor picks is the Cowboys. The Cowboys are playing the Cardinals, and I hadn't used the Cowboys just yet. One of my entries, I have 2 entries in the contest, and one of my entries, I've just been picking against the Cardinals the first 3 weeks. So I picked the Commanders week 1, I picked the Giants week 2, I'm picking the Cowboys this week, and next week I'll be picking the Niners because they play the Cardinals. So that's what I'm doing with one entry. I'm just fading the Cardinals. Probably, I don't know. Obviously, it's going to run out after a while, right? Because they got to win at least one game. I don't see them going with 0 wins throughout the whole way. But, yeah, with one of my entries, I'm kind of just fading the Cardinals, and that's just the game plan for that one. With the other one this week, I did go with the Seahawks. I know they let everybody down that week 1. I'm glad I wasn't on them in week 1. And now I feel like I can go to them because they already got that game out of the way. So I feel pretty safe about the Seahawks today.
Who are the Seahawks playing again?
The Seahawks are playing complete brain fart.
Who are they playing? I'm blanking out also.
It's a horrible team. I'm here pulling it up now, but it's crazy that I can't they're playing Carolina, so they're playing Andy Dalton.
Carolina without Bryce Young. That's right.
Yeah,
there you go.
Which might be a little bit better for Carolina. Who knows? But Carolina still stinks. Like when wide receiver 1 is Adam Thielen, and then the rookie Mingo, who might be good in a couple of years, or he might just be Drake London stuck on a team with a QB that sucks. Who knows, right? But I feel like that's a game that the Seahawks should win, especially at home.
Yeah, I like that. Another opportunity to take Seattle for sure. I'm not going to go there because they burned me week 1 with one of my entries. So that's why this week, I think this is going to be sweat-free. You never know because it is the National Football League. But I am going with the Kansas City Chiefs against the Bears. Got a 12-point spread. If it's close, I still think the Chiefs are going to pull it out. I have I'm not like completely writing off the Bears because, like I said, it's the National Football League. But I'm not too scared of Justin Fields going into Arrowhead and beating the Chiefs on the road with the 12.5-point spread. So give me the Chiefs here. Like you said, the defense is a little bit in front of the offense this week, and the Bears defense is a get-right defense. So if the offense is struggling, I think this is a game where Patrick Mahomes can flex his muscles a little bit. So let's go Kansas City. And I just wanted a sweat-free bet to get to the next week. So that was kind of my thought. And I didn't want to burn Dallas yet. I kind of want to use Dallas later on in the year.
And Roland, yeah, they do play, I believe, on Christmas and on Thanksgiving. So they're one of those teams that you might be able to use there. Roland, did you think about the 49ers at all on Thursday night? I know that was a pretty good spot
I
for a
did.
lot of people.
I did think about them, but I want to save them also. I don't know. I wanted to save the 49ers and the Cowboys, but the Chiefs, I think this is a good spot to take them, even though they're 1-1. I don't think they're going to be the most popular pick in the pool either. I think you're still going to get a lot of people fading the Cardinals,
Yeah.
right? That's going to be a popular one.
What
Maybe the
about a
defense
lot?
will be popular.
Well, I was gonna say because I almost thought about taking the Jags, and I actually had the Jags, but I switched it from the Jags to the Seahawks. I think the Jags might be a pretty popular pick against the Texans.
I think the Jags it's a good spot. They played them week 1 already, right? This is their second matchup in 3 weeks, or am I tripping?
No, they
Uh,
haven't played them
they
just
haven't
yet.
played yet. Okay, never
No.
mind. I think the Jags, they played the Colts week 1, and they should have
Yeah.
beat them, but by a lot, but they barely beat them. Anyways,
Right.
I think this is a spot where the Jags can flex their muscles a little bit too on the Texans. They're hurt on defense, like you said. So yeah, give me the Jags there too. I think they're a good, money line parlay piece too. If you just want to throw somebody in there that's not like the Cowboys or the Chiefs, that's favored by like at least a touchdown.
And the Jags to me are kind of like one of those teams that they're not like a 49ers or an Eagles or a Cowboys where you can almost use them, every other week. So you're not necessarily waiting for that right spot. But for the Jags, this might be one of those spots where you say, hey, I really don't trust the Jags just yet. But against the Texans, this is a game that they should have. They're 1-1. This gets them to 2-1 division game. So it's a pretty good spot for the Jags.
Yeah,
They
like
just
this
have,
is a game, like if the Jags are for real, or not like for real, but serious at least, they should be up 14-0 real quick. Like this is a game they should go up by 2 scores, like the first 2 or 3 possessions, because the Texans don't really have much to stop them. So this is a spot for the Jags too. I agree. They're not one of those teams where you can trust week in, week out, but hey, they're playing the Texans. They should be able to flex a little bit on them. And any other teams that I know the Ravens might be popular this week. They're going up against the backup quarterback in the Colts. I have the Ravens in a parlay play, but I'm a little scared with it just because they are injured. They have injuries across the board. Their offensive line is injured. I know Ronnie Staley's not going to be playing for them. He's an important piece. They're already down OBJ and Justice Hill, so they're going to be relying on the rookie. I still think they're going to get it done, but I think they're going to be another popular play. That's just the only reason why I'm bringing them up.
Yeah, they definitely will. And then maybe some people go with the Bills over the Commanders. I know last week was a week that some people used the Bills as they were like big favorites against the Raiders. I still haven't used the Bills just yet, but I mean, I think that the Bills, or they're going to be a money line parlay piece, right? They're -5.5, -5 against the Commanders. I don't see them losing to the Commanders.
Yeah, Commanders, they have a decent defense, but you still got to think Josh Allen and company should be able to get that one done. Let's see if there's a big upset this week, though, and see if this pool dwindles down a little bit. Almost happened last week. The Giants almost gave it up. I know you were sweating a little bit towards the end, but they ended up getting it done for you in that strategy of fading the Cards, which I think will still prove to be pretty profitable. Anything else you want to cover today, Ben, before we move on? Or
the
before we
Dolphins,
close out the show, really?
The Dolphins are -6 against the Broncos. Not sure if too many people will be on the Dolphins just based on that spread and maybe thinking the Broncos are pretenders. I know our boy Mondo is still holding on hope, so he thinks that maybe that might be one of the upsets if people do go ahead and pick the Dolphins. I think maybe they could be on upset alert against a very desperate Broncos team. Because Roland, let's not forget Sean Payton was taking shots at Nathaniel Hackett about the way the Broncos were being run and whatnot, and that's why they sucked. And here they are 0-2 and 6-point underdogs to go 0-3 to start the season. So it's going to be uncomfortable over there in Denver.
Let's see. Let's do something here before we close out. We talked about like little an upset right there. If you were to just throw a little something on an upset today, who's your upset of the week? Like who should be on upset alert, or what's a team here that you're thinking might be live, spread or outright, doesn't matter. I'm gonna look real quick because it happens every week. There's gonna be somebody inevitably that gets taken down to the brink, that shouldn't really. Man, it's tough this week to call one actually, but I'm actually gonna go with man.
I'm gonna go with the Bucks on Monday night against the Eagles.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Bucks should keep it close. I like that, the +5. I'm gonna say Indy keeps it close with Baltimore. I think Minshew's gonna sling it a little bit. I might be looking stupid, but I'm just throwing it out there with the 7.5. We'll see. It's tough because I think the Bucks will keep it close, but Baker Mayfield hasn't really seen a defense like the Eagles this season. So, but a feel good story there though for the Bucks. Definitely not expected to do much, but they are 2-0. Anything to leave us with, Ben, before we close out here?
Just time to go set those lineups, get those last minute plays in, and good luck to everybody except my opponents, my 6 opponents for fantasy football today, and that's about it.
Exactly. Good luck to everybody except the ones that are playing us. And thank you to everybody that's signed on with us this morning. And we'll see you guys later on in the week.
Peace.